Hi all, welcome to Excel training. Today we are going to look into a concept called data validation in Excel. Right? What is data validation? Refers to if you have some value in a cell reference and you want to validate the data, check the data, and try to restrict some data based on whatever input you are specifying, then we go for data validation. Okay, so the option you have inside your data tab, you have to go to data tab and you can see an option called data validation where you have options to perform your data validation. Okay, so let's say I'll just give an example. I have a column called age. Okay, and let's say you're creating a template where you have a column called age, and in your age column, let's say you have to enter some data. Okay, uh, you may give a positive input, that is 23 or whatever. uh, your age should be between 1 to 100. If I give a input of 150, it still accepts. If I inputted data like this, it still accepts. But I don't want Excel to accept such values. I want Excel to restrict the values because age column should only contain data from 1 to 100. So if at all I want to restrict data in some columns while creating templates, then you can go for data validation. Excel will take care of validating the data when you are entering into the cell, and just make sure that you enter correct data accordingly. Okay, so we'll see some options regarding to data validation. So shortcut to display the window, data validation window, is Alt DL. So I press Alt DL such that data validation window will appear. Alternatively, you can go to data tab in your Excel, data tab. Under that, you have something called data validation. I click on data validation, data validation. Okay. So I prefer shortcut Alt DL. So here, if you observe under settings, allow, it says allow any value. Okay, so I'm in this particular cell called I2. I2 will now by default allow any value. Now I'm going to restrict it. Okay, so I can select any of the options here. Okay, and try to create a data validation inside that. Let's say I want to give a whole number because it's a age column. I want to give data between 1 to 100. Let's say minimum 1, maximum 100. Okay, now click OK. Now this cell will only accept values from 1 to 100. I press 45, it accepts. But if I give something like 125, it will throw you a error and it will ask you to re-enter it again. I give some text here, it still will not allow you. Okay, and it will keep giving you 45, which is the previous valid data. Okay, so unless and until you give a valid data in this cell, it will not allow you to go back, or it will keep throwing you the error. Okay, so that's what data validation is. It's one of the options available in data validation, such that you can restrict the data to enter between a particular limit. Okay, so I've only apply data validation for this particular cell. You can even select the entire column and give that. Okay, data validation, it's already there. I'm just trying to erase it. Okay, so now I say whole number between 1 to 100. I want to give a data validation here. So I say okay. Now if I press enter, it will throw you an error. Okay, unless you enter a positive data, it will not allow you to throw, it will not allow you to enter any other data. Okay, so I've data validated this whole column now. Okay, yes. Now we have some more options as far as data validation is concerned. I click on data validation and see here you have decimal values. I click on decimal. You can even enter minimum and maximum decimal value you specify inside that. You can give that as well. There is one useful option called list. Let's say you're trying to create a drop down. Okay, now I have this column called products. Okay, I have some specified products which user has to select. I don't want user to enter it because there might be a probability of entering some misspelled data. So instead of that, I want them to select from the already created list of data. So I can use list under data validation. I press Alt DL to uh, populate that window, and instead of any value, I go for list. Okay, I select list, and in the source, I select in such a way that this list will appear. So I select data from A2 to A6 and press enter, such that going forward this is a drop down and only those values inside the drop down can be selected. It will make things easier for the user. Instead of entering a product, they can just select from the list. Okay, so that's what data validation you can use. You can create a drop down as well. Okay, so same way I can see other options. I can even restrict dates. Let's say if you have a date column and you want to specify a date, minimum date or maximum date, that is start date and end date, you can still specify those things and work accordingly, right? So all these options you have text length. You can even restrict the text length of your text. Let's say you have a column called PAN card. PAN card length will be a specified length, and you can restrict the text length such that it will not be more than the expected length of the text, right? So those are some of the useful options present in data validation, right? And apart from that, you have two other apart from that settings value, you have two other tabs here. One is input message and error alert. Okay, so input message refers to whenever I select a particular cell, that cell should display a tip for the user or some message for the user what exactly they have to enter. Okay, so let's say I click on this and say input message. I can give a tip. I say tip, and what is the input message? Please enter data between 1 to 100. I press enter. I click OK. Now, whenever you come and click on that particular cell, it will give you a tip on what exactly you have to enter in that particular cell. So you can make sure user understands what exactly he has to specify. Okay, and coming back to this age column, if I enter some wrong data, it display you a message which is very much system defined error, right? So instead of that, you can even specify a user defined error message, right? You can give a specified short length error message such that user will probably understand what exactly he has to enter. So I can actually specify what he has to specify. Let's say I take this column, I'll say all DL for data validation, and I can go to error alert, and I can say, see here you have three different options: stop, warning, and information. When you say information, it will still allow you to enter some wrong data. It will give you an error message, but it will not stop you from entering the wrong data. Okay, so let's say I give an information here and say error entered data is not correct, something like this, and I again restrict this from any value to whole number from 1 to 100. I say okay. Now if I enter some data like 45, it allows me, but if I enter something like a bigger number, it will throw me a information error message: entered data is not correct. Okay, if you still want to continue, you can press OK, but it will not stop you from entering the wrong data. It will just throw you an information message, and it will allow or continue to enter the wrong data. But if you really want to stop entering from wrong data, then I'll have to select stop. Okay, so instead of information, if you say stop, it will definitely not allow you. Okay, so I say error once again. I say please enter or please enter correct data, something like this, and I restrict this once again. Go to settings, any value, whole number. I say minimum 1 and maximum 100. I click OK. Now you enter some valid input, it accepts. But if I enter some wrong data like text data, it will definitely say please enter correct data, and it will say retry, and it will not allow you to proceed unless and until you enter some correct data. Okay, so that's what the difference between information and error. We have another option called warning as well. Instead of uh, stop, I can simply say warning and click OK. Again, same thing, you get a warning here, right? It will say, do you want to continue? It gives you an option for the user whether do you want to continue or not. If you don't want to continue, you can say no. It will again ask you to enter some input. If again you enter some wrong data, and if you still want to continue, you can say yes. Okay, but in information it will not even ask whether you want to continue or not. In stop also it will not ask you, but it will definitely stop it. Okay, but in information you get an option whether you want to continue or you want to stop it. Okay, so any option you can select based on the selected inputs. Okay, so that's about some of the options present under data validation window. So you have settings to restrict your data. You have input message to give an input for the user before even entering the data, and you have error alert to make sure that you give a customized error message for the user. Okay, so this is data validation, and we also created a drop down just to select data from the given list. And we have also have a concept called dependent drop downs. Okay, so in real time we observe that you have a drop down. Once you select this drop down, based on this you get another drop down of based on whatever input you select here. This drop down will also change accordingly. According to whatever input you select here, this drop down values will change. Okay, so if you want to construct such report where there is dependency created between drop downs, how to perform that we're going to see now. Okay, so let's see this data. Let's take this sample data. Now I have different types of food. Okay, styles of food, let's say. So South Indian, North Indian, and Chinese. Under each criteria, let's say South Indian I have this, under North India I have this, and under Chinese I have this. Okay, now what I want to do is I'll have to create a dependent drop down. Let's say if I say South Indian here, I should get a list of all South Indian items in the dependent drop down. If I say North Indian, North Indian items has to display, right? So let's construct that small dashboard. Okay, so for that to happen, what should I do is first I'll have to create a drop down which contains these types of data, right? So I'll say Alt DL for creating a drop down. I go to this settings, instead of any value I say a list, and for source I select this, right? Now I press enter such that I get a drop down here with South Indian, North Indian. Let's say select any one of this. By selecting this, I should get a list of data which is corresponding to this. If I select Chinese, I should get this list. If I select South Indian, I should get this list. That's what I have to perform. So for that, we have a function called indirect function. Okay, so indirect is a function in Excel where it converts a name to a range. Okay, so if you specify a name, that is defined name, this indirect function will convert that defined name into a range. Okay, so what exactly I mean by that, if I say a practical example, you will be able to understand. So what I'll do is I will convert these ranges to named ranges and give that inside my indirect function such that it becomes a range, and it gets converted back to a range when you specify a defined name range. So based on this, I'm going to construct this named ranges. So I select this South Indian, Control C, and make sure I give this range the name called South Indian, Control V, and enter. This list is going to be South Indian, named as South Indian. And same way, North Indian, I select this, Control C, and select this and say North Indian, Control V, North Indian. This becomes North Indian. In same way, Chinese, I just select this, Control C, and name this range as Chinese. Control V, Chinese. So this name is called South Indian, this is called North Indian, this is called Chinese. Okay, now we have these ranges correspondingly. So now I create one more list here. I say Alt DL for data validation, and here instead of any value, I'm going to create a drop down anyways. So it is going to be a list again. Now I say source. Okay, so instead of writing selecting a particular cell reference, I write a function here. Which function? Indirect function. Indirect, open bracket. Okay, now this is a named range. Whatever I have here is a named range. Now my indirect function, what it will do, it will convert these named ranges into a proper range. Okay, that is these proper ranges. Okay, so in this indirect function, I select this and close bracket. such that it will take this named range, because I've named all these as named ranges. This name will be converted to a range. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. Now this is going to be a list, and I click here, it becomes the list, that is chapati, paratha, etc. Okay, now if I change this to South Indian, this list will update accordingly. It will become idli, dosa, etc. Okay, and if I select Chinese, and correspondingly this list gets updated as well. Fine. So this is called dependent dropdowns. What we are doing here, we are actually creating the named ranges with these names. The names should be properly this. That's why I've copy pasted and I've given those names here, South Indian, North Indian, and Chinese respectively. And those names, I'm using this as an input inside my indirect function. Now this Chinese is a named range, right? And the South Indian is a named range. Okay, so these are all named ranges. These named ranges, your indirect function will convert these named ranges back to the range, and it will get displayed because I'm using a data validation to display the list. Okay, so this is all about your dependent dropdowns and data validation.